record keeping is really important. We did emphasize this yesterday. We're going to come back and recommend it again. We had some, I was visiting with Linwood, Ireland, and a couple people late last night after the banquet, and we actually got into talking about this again because it is such a big deal. Folks, I know how busy you are. I'm a business owner myself. Please write stuff down. You have a meeting with an employee, you're unhappy with them, you've said, hey, you're not coming to work on time, get it done, write it down. The EEOC loves documentation. And you say, but gee, it's just a little handwritten note. I don't care. They don't care. It's documentation. And in fact, I'd rather have you do it in longhand or just type off something, you know, on the word processor and just print it out. It doesn't have to be on a fancy form or anything like that. Document what's happening. You bring in Billy Bob. He's been late 3 times in the last 2 weeks. You have an oral warning. You can make a note to your file. I had a meeting with Billy Bob this morning. He's been late 3 times in the last 2 weeks. He's a short service employee. We're concerned about him. 2 weeks later, he's still not showing up for work on time. Written documentation. 2 weeks after that, you terminate him and you contest his unemployment claim. You can, if he brings an EEO complaint, you contest his EEO complaint. What did you use? You use that 1, 2, 3 notes in the file. Sounds easy? It is easy, but it takes time, and I know how precious your time is. But if you do it and you're disciplined about it, I promise you better results. The other thing is that one of my concepts in counseling employees is called an opportunity to succeed. I know, especially with a tight employment market, that it's not easy to find employees. The first rule of this road is we don't want to fire this fellow. We want this fellow to adopt to our culture, and part of our culture in America for good employees is they're at work on time and they stay there all day and they work hard. This sounds unique, but unfortunately, especially with a couple younger generations, we're dealing with the X-Gens and we're dealing with the millennials, they do not have the same appreciation for showing up on time. And so I mention that on purpose because it's one of the chronic things that we're seeing with young employees. How do you straighten that out? As soon as they start working and you see a pattern like that, you jump on it. You make a big deal out of it right away and you document it and you stay on top of it. Most of those people are going to come back. I'm going to have to answer questions in the next session, okay? But please come back and ask it, okay? But what happens is that you've got to make sure you keep track of it. But most of these people are smart. If they say, gee, this is really important, I never realized that. Professor Shine let me show up for school, 15 minutes late a couple times, and he didn't fuss at me. That's true, because I got more important things to do. But what happens is in the workplace, my people show up late. I'm on top of them, and it really does work. So part of it, and if it doesn't work, you've laid out your groundwork to get rid of that person without paying them unemployment. What is my objective when I'm handling these cases? My objective is to win everything. I don't want them to get unemployment. I don't want them to prevail in an EEO complaint. I don't want them to get anything because they don't deserve it. If they got to the point where they got terminated by my client, they deserve to be on the street. They need to learn the lesson. Again, I know some of this sounds harsh, but I work for you. I don't work for the other side, okay? And there are plenty of attorneys out there working for the other side. Be careful about your tax paperwork. One of the things that shakes me up sometimes, we'll work with a new company and the wage hour division will show up on their doorstep and say, we're going to be back next week. We want to see the last 2 years of payroll records and we want to see everybody's I-9 form. Wage hour routinely asks the I-9 form. We go talk to the client has no idea where they are. They've got I-9s on maybe a third of their employees. You need to have a system. Many businesses today have a checklist in the top of their personnel file. Here's the I-9 form, here's the W-4 form, here's the form either accepting or rejecting health insurance. Been there a year, here's their 401k registration and so forth. Keep track of what's in that file. Disciplinary notice in a separate folder in the same file. If there's an application for disability because someone's been out work, get that form in there. Keeping these records is really important, and again, it'll pay dividends later. Employee handbooks, a couple of things on employee handbooks is, first of all, I've been doing employee handbooks for 30 years, and one of the things that we run into is that employee handbooks that were done 10 years ago are not current today. So we find that employers get comfortable with them and they don't update them. So if you haven't updated your handbook in the last 10 years, by all means, get with somebody and update your handbook, because, for instance, a lot of them don't have social media policies, don't have email policies, don't have trade secret references and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff in employee handbooks today that wasn't as big a deal 10 years ago. But when you do the employee handbook or you reissue it, you need to get a receipt from each and every employee that they have received and read the employee handbook. Make sure that's in their personnel file. I handled an EEO case a couple years ago, and the young lady who was terminated knew she was being terminated, physically went into the office where the HR records were kept and removed her employee handbook receipt, because she knew that when we went to the EEOC, we would be producing that because she violated the rules of the employee handbook. She actually physically removed it. Now, what's the rule of thumb here, folks? Don't allow general access to the personnel files. It's something that shouldn't have happened in the first place. But it tells you that folks who get terminated are bad employees. It doesn't mean they're stupid employees. So she was pretty clever to have done that. For some reason, that particular client, you think, had scanned it. So we had it in a scan so we could show that it had been done, but it was scanned. And that's, most of my clients don't do that. The client happened to have a scan of that particular one. I don't even know why. But it was real interesting. Of course, the EEOC, when they heard what she had done, and we actually could prove that, they dropped the case. They said, they just said, yeah, here's your right to sue, let her get out of here. So even they, in their very pro-employee, didn't want to be dealing with a bad actor like that. So just a little note on that one.